You know, at the end of the day, people, American Indian movement, Red Power, at the end of the day was just trying to create change, trying to create a better life um, for themselves and future generations. And the fact that, and then reconnecting to something that was almost obliterated in their indigenous cultures across the United States. And you talk about justice, and there is models that we could think about as far as justice is concerned. Um, when you think of indigenous history, there is not a single old jail, an old prison like the Gulag or something. There doesn't exist. There is no prison that exists prior um, to the onset of colonization.
Mhm. Well, thank you for joining us for the Woodstock Film Festival podcast, Let's Talk Film. It's a very on the nose name, I think, but we'll go with it. I'm your host, Adam Shartoff. The film festival will take place this coming week, October 15th through the 19th in Woodstock, Saugerties, Rosendale, and Kingston. Visit woodstockfilmfestival.org for tickets and details. And I'm very, very excited that my guests today are the team behind a new documentary called Free Leonard Peltier, which I'm going to say right away before I forget to mention one of the most important things, which is that it's having one screening, which, by the way, adds value to the screening. There's only one. So make it over Thursday, October 16th, 8:15 at the Bearsville Theater, which is a fantastic venue, I might add. Great projection, great sound there. So you guys are very fortunate in that way. And I'm joined today by co-directors David France and Jesse Shortbull and producer Jhane Myers. How's your earring doing?
It's fine. It was hurting me. I had to take it off. I'm
Oh, good.
sorry.
Oh, don't be so. All right. So let me read a little bit of first briefly about the film. Acclaimed directors Jesse Shortbull, who directed Lakota Nation versus the United States, and David France, How to Survive a Plague, which David, one of the perhaps I think important documentaries come out in the last 25 years, revisit one of the most discredited convictions in modern America to chronicle the 5-decade campaign to exonerate the most famous living Native American activist. With astonishing archival footage and AI recreations, the film brings alive the turbulence of the 70s when the U.S. government cracked down on the American Indian movement as it protested centuries of anti-Indian injustice and oppression. Leonard Peltier, one of its leaders, became the most notorious casualty. And this film beautifully and painstakingly goes over the case and what's going on as these mercifully persistent folks continue to fight for his exoneration or his clemency, anyway. David France is an Oscar-nominated filmmaker, best-selling author, and award-winning investigative journalist. As I mentioned, How to Survive a Plague, but also The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson, and much else. Welcome to Chechnya, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Shortbull. I mentioned Lakota Nation versus the U.S., which was a big festival award-winning film. And we're also joined by Jhane Myers, who is a producer on the film and also of 9 other documentaries. So she's a veteran documentary producer and somehow or other is also a producer on Prey, the 5th installment in the Predator series. We'll have to have another episode just about that, Jhane.
It's pretty exciting.
I have no doubt. Exactly. But today we'll talk about Leonard Peltier. The name of the film is Leonard Peltier, free Leonard Peltier, excuse me. And David, before we started, you were telling me that the film screened at Sundance. So, I mean, what does that mean? Was that the world premiere, or is Woodstock Film Festival going to be the world premiere? Because you actually had to take the film back into the editing room, right?
Absolutely. Well, the film um, was we did bring it to Sundance for premiere, but 7 days before our first screening was the last day of the Biden administration, 14 minutes before he passed the torch to Donald Trump, which was unfortunate. Um, he granted clemency to Leonard. So we were there filming with all the advocates in front of the federal penitentiary in Florida. When the news came down, we were able to include that news at the very last minute for our screening in Sundance. But we knew that the story needed to be completed. It took another 6 weeks for him to get out, and we filmed with him, and we went back home with him, and looked at the successes that the activists were able to accomplish in that period, and really be able to produce a social justice film with an incredibly happy ending. And we just finished it, and so we're calling the Woodstock screening our world re-premiere for Free Leonard Peltier.
Free Leonard Peltier V 1.1 or
2.0, or it's
2.0.
the infinity. Yeah. This is the story. This is forever, ever.
But, right. You mentioned Jhane's documentary, The Square, which is also a similar case. This is like an interesting phenomenon. It's but we don't have to get into it right now. But it's
that's the thing about what we're doing. As documentary filmmakers, we are covering news
almost in real time.
News. We were doing feedback screenings on Capitol Hill in December at a time when he was given a 0% chance of getting any sort of attention from the White House. And we helped with the activists who were working the Capitol Hill like so thoroughly in those weeks leading up to the last day in office. The film itself helped spark those conversations with lawmakers that finally and incredibly won this kind of momentum leading up to that last day. It was still touch and go about whether or not it would happen, but when it did happen, we realized that as journalists, that we had an obligation to continue telling the story.
Jesse, how did you and David and Jhane, how did you guys connect initially? What was the origin story behind that?
Well, I think it was, for David, he witnessed a lot of what was going on in the 1970s in real time, and quickly Leonard became a figure in his life. And David witnessed, and Jhane witnessed, the call for justice for him throughout the late 70s and 80s and early 90s. And what I really appreciate, and I think it's that curiosity, especially, like with Jhane and the Indian country. I see Jhane as a representative of Indian country as a whole, and its desires to find justice for Leonard, even as things waxed and waned over the years. That pulse was always kept alive by people like Jhane and David, at least as a curiosity of what's being done and how can we remedy the situation. And the same goes for our other Native producers. They've all had a deep passion for Leonard's story and finding justice. And I think for me, growing up in Pine Ridge, obviously being aware of Leonard as a household name, mm-hmm. but yet never dreaming that I'd ever have a chance to intersect with his story. it was very, very powerful. And I really credit that compassion that David and Jhane, and our rest of our producing team and creative team, that just kept asking the question, why did this happen? Why is he still in jail? And you know, with their confidence, I immersed myself in Leonard's story and completely turned around my understanding of my own homeland. Even growing up close to those events in the 1980s in Western South Dakota, uncovering just a mass of information that has been hidden, or, you know, and understanding that history helps me to understand my tribe and the bigger picture in South Dakota and the United States as far as indigenous rights.
You're from the Lakota.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a member of the Oglala Sioux tribe in South Dakota, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, the Oglala Lakota Oyate in South Dakota, and yeah, Pine Ridge was the scene of the Reign of Terror in the 1970s.
Yes. Jhane, what how long has this been a dream for you to make a film? I mean, let alone the film that it turns out the way it does, but how long has this been? Well, you know, the film turns out pretty well, but more importantly, Leonard's story turns out
Well,
well.
this story is something that I've been watching since I was a young woman, when my grandparents were still alive and they raised me. I'm also Native American. I'm Comanche, Blackfeet, and Nakota, so I do have that northern blood and that. But you know, this is a story that has affected so many Native people. You know, I mean, thousands of. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of, you know, hundreds of activists and protesters and people that went before us, all trying to make this happen. So when you think about this story is a moving history. You know, this is a moving part of modern American history. And when I tried to explain it to non-Native people, and they're trying to grasp Leonard, you know, I said, think of him as the Nelson Mandela of the Americas. So, you know, when you think of that, and here's a person that's been wrongly imprisoned, you know, longest serving political years in 1 month is what he usually says. And so I think, you know, this, for me, it's a dream to work on this.
How's Leonard doing these days, by the way? I mean, we know that you can't go through 50 years of being in a prison and not have your health challenges.
And which he does have, and he's coping with them one at a time. You know, it was a shock to realize the conditions that federal prisons keep people in this country, and how far away from healthcare they had kept him over decades and decades. So he's you know, it's step by step for him, but he's in such good spirits that's pulling everything else along, and really pulling him back to health.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Speaking of which, I mentioned before that Free Leonard Peltier will have a screening on Thursday, October 16th at 8:15 at the Bearsville Theater. Well, I neglected to mention that following the screening, there'll be a Q&A with David, Jhane, and Paul McGuire, who is another producer on the film, Holly Cook Macarro, who is a subject in the documentary, a very, let's say, essential one, and a
formidable.
That's right. Thank you. That was the word I was searching. And a virtual Q&A with Leonard Peltier himself, which is just going to be really, really exciting.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I hope we see you there. We would love to have you come, and thank you for spending your Indigenous Peoples Day, part of your Indigenous Peoples Day
yeah.
weekend with us.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I work at a radio station, and you know, one of the things I do, most exciting and important parts of the job is the weather. People still like to hear the weather, Jesse, and this, you know, and I'm just talking about this weekend, and I said, you know, and I referred to Monday as Indigenous Peoples Day, and I might dead name Columbus Day, just so people that are don't get it understand that what holiday I'm talking about. But and Jesse, you're gonna miss the fun.
Oh yeah, no, I'm would you know, Woodstock. I would love to have
I know.
come. You know,
Yeah,
uh,
it's a long way.
yeah, but you know, I've been so blessed throughout this entire journey that I mean, the second that Leonard was the announcement came down, I mean, everything's just been icing on the cake from that point forward, and uh, and I'm just you know, grateful even just to talk to you right now, Adam, and
Thank you.
you
Yeah,
know, give a little
thanks.
insight to the people
Thank you.
from my perspective, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll definitely be with everybody, David, Jane, Holly, and Spirit, Paul. So
And
I'll
Leonard.
be rooting them along from South Dakota.
Um, and Jane, what's been the response that Frank Leonard's? I mean, there have been people who've committed horrible crimes who have served much less time, you know. Um, and I think in Denmark, since you know I have a little knowledge now of Denmark, the I think a life sentence is 25. I mean, so it's a life sentence is considered like 15 or 20 years or something. I mean, what we're doing is it's inhumane, you know. And I don't know if you guys have had time with your hands full and everything, but I'm not sure I'm recommending the Alabama Solution. It's a very, very hard film to watch, but what we're doing to prisoners. But
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great film.
yeah. But what has been the response? Have we heard what like government agencies' response is to, because you know the film is obviously very, very for the free, you know, the release of Leonard and for you know it's very sensitive to Indian rights, obviously, et cetera. So I'm just wondering if there's been any kind of backlash or anything like that.
Well, I think, we've been in the festival year with our film, and we've also
Right.
been doing Native community engagement. And when we take this to Native communities, it's just overwhelming because, like I said, for me, this is a story that I grew up with, and people never expected, and Leonard himself never expected to have this ending. So for people to, know that Leonard is, has a commutation and he's serving out his time in his home, it's been like a really healing thing because people have told me I didn't know how affected I was of this. When I heard that he was getting out, I was excited, but then when I saw the film, it just made me cry. But it's not like I'm crying because I'm sad; it's more like tears of joy.
Mhm.
It's been just a really healing thing. As Native people, we often don't get things to celebrate, and this is one of the huge things that we do. Get to celebrate this. This is a win for us, and so that's what I know. I don't know, about the other agencies. I hear that Washington's kind of like in a little flux right now, but
I heard that too.
Hey, what have you heard, Jane?
Yeah, one wouldn't have expected this to take place in the Trump.
Adam, can I just say something real quick
Would
based on
you?
what you said?
Please do. Oh, absolutely. Please do.
You know, at the end of the day, people, American Indian movement, Red Power, at the end of the day was just trying to create change, trying to create a better life um, for themselves and future generations. And the fact that, and then reconnecting to something that was almost obliterated in their indigenous cultures across the United States. And you talk about justice, and there is models that we could think about as far as justice is concerned. When you think of Indigenous history, there is not a single old jail, an old prison, like the Gulag or something, you know. There doesn't exist. There is no prison that exists prior to the onset of colonization.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that justice didn't occur in our cultures, that there wasn't a system in place. And I'm not saying that it would have been utopia, but there are ways to think about justice differently.
Mm.
And I can say for Lakota culture, you know, we had the concept of restorative justice. And that's something that I wish we would really look into, as opposed to this, you know, system that we're just keep building more and more prisons, you know, and is it really helping anything? What, you know?
Well said. Yeah. We're warehousing human beings and as opposed to rehabilitating. Anybody else have any?
Right. We're incarcerating people in no greater numbers than we are our Indigenous Americans. You know, they just by head count alone, they say that the largest Indigenous reservation in the country is the prison system.
Wow.
There are more Indigenous folks in prison in the U.S. than head count in any of the other sovereign nations. And that says just a horrible thing about the continued oppression of a people who have been targeted by the U.S. government for hundreds of years. And then we get to Leonard, Leonard is when the history of these hundreds of years will be told, he's going to be on the canon of great civil rights leaders who, despite the war against him by the FBI and the Justice Department, which included fabricating evidence against him and bringing the entire weight of the anti-Indian kind of hatred of Washington onto his case, I think we'll see that he has given us a model of survival and resistance like none other.
Well, thank you guys for coming on, and thank you for making this really rewarding documentary. I'm going to urge people to make it to the screening if at all possible. Visit again woodstockfilmfestival.org to see free Leonard Peltier, and then have an experience where you kind of meet him afterwards.
Yeah.
You can maybe ask Leonard a question or connect with him.
Anything.
Yeah, I'm sure he might just want to know, like, he might have some actually questions too. How long has he been now? How long has he been free?
He got out in February.
Okay. All right.
And he's not entirely free. He's still serving out the rest of his sentence.
Right. He's under home arrest, or is there another term for
home
that?
Confinement?
Confinement. Okay.
But home is described as under the conditions for him is within a 75-mile radius of his house.
Oh,
so he can
okay.
get to his doctors and he can get to his
spiritual
practices, right. And yeah.
Right.
He's been free for 8 months.
Yeah.
8 months.
Yeah. You could have put the word "a" in front of the title, and you know.
Yeah, we thought about maybe changing it to Freed Leonard Peltier, but we didn't want to give away too much.
All right, guys. Well, I'll make a my a point of being at that screening. I have like a number of Q&As and intros, but that will be a top priority for me. So I hope to and plan to see you guys there.
Thank you so much. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you, Adam.
Same to you guys. Yes.
Thank you.
And I would love to do this again when David can tell you I have a podcast I've been doing for like 14, 15 years, and it's kind of ridiculous. But on such like similar kind of conversations. So maybe in the next iteration of the film, in its next part of its journey, maybe we can do this again. I'd love that opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adam.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Adam.
Great honor.